All right. Good evening, everybody. Happy Monday. I hope you all had a blessed and prayer-filled weekend. And I'm going to be honest with you, I've been in pretty much constant study mode for the past 7 weeks in the Washington, D.C. desert. Try as I might, I couldn't come up with anything interesting to say to you guys because all of my energy is now being put towards simply surviving the end of the summer classes. I've got finals on Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday, I head back home to North Dakota. So, all of that to say, I'm pretty wiped out, and I don't have much to talk about. But Mark always has something to talk about. So, how you doing, Mark?
I'm doing okay, Father. It's hot here today, so it's just been 3 days of hot. So it's just like
Yeah,
miserable.
we've got a very brief reprieve for today and tomorrow, and then the wind's going to start blowing from the south again. And that's the weird thing about Washington D.C. is the wind is always blowing from the south,
Hmm.
and like that means something very specific in North Dakota. If the wind is blowing from the south, that means there's a storm coming.
Mm,
Right?
mm.
Otherwise, you got your regular old prevailing northwesterlies, and that's what you've got. But a pretty normal thing here is like to have the wind blow from the south and yeah, so we get a little break for 2 days, and then just my last day in Washington D.C. The heat index is supposed to be 105, just to say goodbye to me.
When's your last day?
Friday.
Oh, really? Oh, geez.
Yep, yep. These classes go quick when you're do them 5 days a week, week after week after week.
I thought, yeah, I thought you were there to the end of August. So
No, 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 just 2 months. Bishop has work for me back in the diocese. I couldn't stay here until the end of August.
I bet. No,
He's on a
Corey.
cruise. He's on a cruise right now.
So our buddy Corey posted a thing about authority, and DC Schindler was talking about authority. And I haven't listened to the whole talk because it's like an hour and 20 or something. So I've been biting through it, right? Um, but I thought that might be an interesting sort of a topic to talk about. Um, because I think people are confused about that. And I think the fundamental problem is you actually can't talk about authority without understanding hierarchy first. And I think
Hmm.
that's where people are
Hmm.
like, if you don't understand the hierarchy, even the need for authority is kind of questionable. And
And the hierarchy itself is sort of dependent on what the goal of the hierarchy is, right? So like, what is it that you're doing, right? And like, do you just have like a
well,
really small team that's redoing the courtyard of the parish and like
that's
just gonna take something?
implementation. Yeah, that's the implementation of the hierarchy depends on that, right? But not the I mean, hierarchy is older than trees. Like so
Right. So you would also at that point, like you would, in theory, like there'd be natural, we'll say natural hierarchies, because there could also be, human constructed hierarchies.
see
Right. So
this
like
is
a
but
natural,
see this is what's strange to me. Like, don't you start with the created order? Like I don't understand this middle out
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. So like a natural hierarchy, right? We could go something very simple, like, who of these guys here can throw a spear the farthest? And you could rank the guys and how far they can throw a spear. You give them 3 shots in case they whiff
Right. But
one.
like there is that pre the in the ability or inability of somebody to throw a spear, right? Or the degree to which they can throw the spear well pre-exists them throwing the spear because it's a created order,
Mhm.
right?
That's why I say it's natural, because it's just kind of
Mm,
born, right?
mm. But I
Yeah.
think I, I I think it's people get into this thing where they divide humans from nature, and then they go, well, there's human made hierarchies. Like, no, there aren't. It's just hierarchy.
Well, I mean, so the thing about a human organization is you're not guaranteed to have the best people in positions of authority, right? Sometimes you get a dud for a
Right.
bishop, right? That can
But that's
happen. So
but that's the well, and also there's not one authority. And DC Schindler was interesting because he said there's three faces to authority: the king, the prophet, and the priest. I think it was the third one. I thought was interesting, and I was like, that's an interesting way to talk about that. But yeah,
that's
this
an
is
interesting way to think about things here.
well, that's but you see, the funny part is John's all wrapped up in the same thing, right? Because when you reduce somebody to an authority like Bishop Barron, right? You're like, well, of course he doesn't go on cruises. He's the authority. And it's like, no. He's a human. And humans go on cruises. And so
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know where this other like. Why are you conflating two things that have no
every
crossover?
once in a while, even a bishop needs to like set aside the burdens of authority and just enjoy
Right,
a nice view. And I'm not worried about him getting crazy on this cruise. So
right,
yeah.
right.
So the priest, prophet, and king thing is a reflection on some of the different things you can see in the Old Testament, right? So you could look at David, and he's got a certain kind of an authority in a certain realm that he comes in. You could look at Nathan the prophet, who comes and chews him out when he does things poorly, and then the whole priestly order and the whole priestly caste, and the way that they are in charge of the worship in the temple. And when we look at the New Testament, we would see that Christ fulfills all three of those functions. And um, and then the Christian faithful have their, everybody has kind of a priestly office that they're called to just by virtue of their baptism, a prophetic office and a kingly office, but according to their station in life and like what they're supposed to be doing. So, your average lay faithful isn't a priest like I'm a priest. They don't go up and minister to others in their priesthood necessarily, but they can offer spiritual sacrifices to the Father. Um, the prophetic ministry, they might not be called to teach in a formal way, but they
Yep.
should be giving witness to Christ by hopefully, their honesty, their integrity, their work ethic, or at the very minimum, their repentance. Sometimes that's all people can offer, and that's better than nothing. And then,
Right,
they
right.
have a certain dominion over their lives that they need to exercise with Christ. So that's where that list comes from.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think the problem is they've conflated even leadership and authority. And what people don't realize is that leaders aren't always authorities at all. In fact, sometimes a leader has no authority because leading has nothing to do with authority. Now, it's handy if the two are in the same person at the same time. That's great,
Mhm.
but it's hardly required. And that's why I think people are horribly confused about how this works because they don't really understand that these are different concepts that don't have an overlap. They
It's
can
sort of like
overlap.
you can look at this as an example from church history. I think it was Saint Francis of Assisi and Innocent the Third. I think Innocent the Third was the Pope at the time, right? And like Saint Francis of Assisi is this incredibly holy fellow whose integrity of life, his commitment to poverty, and just the spirit that he was carrying from the Lord was inspiring to a lot of people, and they wanted to follow after him. But he's like, guys, I the Pope has put a moratorium on founding new religious orders. Like, I don't know what we're supposed to do. But he had like people insisting on following after him anyway, because he apparently was also quite a charismatic speaker as well. So not hard to
Mhm.
see the following there. And so he had to go to the authority, right? And I am fairly certain it was Innocent the Third. But if anybody wants to go look that up, they can drop it in the comments. And Innocent the Third is not in any danger of canonization. He's also not, utterly depraved. He was just kind of. So he's an interesting fellow because he was sort of at like the height of the temporal power of the papacy and its influence across Europe in temporal affairs. So people are kind of got a mixed legacy about, kind of the mixing of the powers
Mhm.
there. Um,
Mhm.
So he's not in any debt, but he Francis had to go to Innocent III and ask for a dispensation to found a new, not only a new religious order, but a new type of religious order. So there you can see a very clear example of a somebody who's got these leadership qualities, and like he's pointing towards something, and people are clamoring to follow him, but he has to go to the authority to get kind of the full blessing and approval there.
Yeah, and I think the king can be an authority without being a leader, or be a leader without being authority. And people don't like, they don't understand any of this stuff
Well,
because it's all power.
how would a king be a leader without being an authority? Then would that be like he's in exile right now, but the people still gather around him, or
No, I mean, you
because I always
follow
think
the
of authorities. Authorities come with offices, right? Authority comes with holding a particular office or a
No, no,
function.
you assign offices to authority. Authority happens irrespective of all these other. This is what's so confusing to me. It's like people have qualities. Qualities are very hard to nail down with propositions. So, for example, if I go into any group, I'm the authority automatically. I don't know why. I don't know how this works. I don't like it. It makes me very uncomfortable, right? But always, it's always true. It doesn't matter. Like I can go into an existing group and right, I'll pull the followers immediately, immediately. And if I'm good about it, which usually I am, when I say stuff, it gets echoed back by whoever's actually, taking the reins of responsibility, we'll say. Right. And so a king that listens to the prophet is not acting as an authority. The prophet's the authority.
Okay, so there would be like, but like when the prophet has to ask the king to vindicate his land rights, let's say, because somebody's been stealing his sheep or whatever, then the king would have the authority to resolve that
But
dispute.
authority is not universal. I'm not a universalist, right? So the fact that there's uh, kings, priests, and prophets tells you something right away. There's three different dominions there.
Right, right.
Right.
Right. So that's
Okay.
what I was trying to say, right?
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
when the prophet would need something from outside their sphere, right? They would need to go to another authority within that sphere, just like how you know,
Potentially, but it's not a guarantee. I mean, usually people will just defer to the prophet and disobey the king. I mean, that's not uncommon. Like, I don't
right,
this is
right.
why I don't understand. Like, this happens all the look stories are you actually reading, because in the ones I'm reading, it's pretty clear. It's just a very fuzzy thing, and people want bright, clear lines, and it's the bright, clear lines are there. They're just not at that place. They're not in things like authority and leadership. And I think that's the problem, is when people are deeply confused about these things, they squish them down, or when people think they can understand them. Like most people can't understand this concept at all. Authority is just too hard for most people because they're individualists. And so they're trying to understand it from their perspective. But you can't, if you look up at an authority, almost everything they do is not going to make sense to you because from your perspective, it can't, because you don't have the same picture as the authority, which might
Right.
be why they're the authority and you're a pleb, by the way. But people don't like that. People don't want to know that, right? People very uncomfortable. I'm an individual. I can make decisions for my. You've never made a decision for yourself in your life, and you're never gonna, right? Like just give that up, right? So it'll be fine, right? And the question is, what are you following? Right? Are
Mhm.
you following your passions, desires, whatever you want to call them? Uh, or are you following something outside yourself that is good? Or are you following something outside yourself that is not good? Or are you just following a person of the weak? Because the big problem that I've seen, which I think I mentioned in my live stream, was, it's Sam Harris, and then oh he betrayed me, and then it's somebody else, and then it's Eric Weinstein. Oh he betrayed me, and then it's Jordan Peterson. And oh he betrayed me, and then it's Jocko Willink. And oh he betrayed, and it's like guys, do you not see what's? And they don't, because they're in it, so they don't see that they're hopping from person to person to person, looking for leadership, finding only authority, and becoming very confused. Because I think that's actually the essence of what we're in, the flood that we're in.
So is it, I'm trying to figure out how you're using these words here. Is it the case that a leader is somebody who's trying to go in a certain direction, and the authority is somebody who has the capacity to well, that's where I'm getting the mixed up. I don't know where the authority comes from in your
The
mind.
authority is the person you listen to and take as canonical ground state.
Okay, so
Right.
there's like a trust there, deserve it or undeserve it.
Right. You got to trust something because your senses are limited. I can't see, big surprise, I can't tell what the weather's like in DC right now. It's not physically possible because I'm not in DC. And so I'll
You
have
could
to
ask me,
somebody
and
like
you could also ask the weather, right? The weatherman. And
Right,
you
but
could
I
also
can't.
just not believe both of those. If you
Right,
wanted
but
to be silly.
exactly. But I can't trust the weatherman because that's a roll up of a huge area that they call DC. But like, I actually just want to know where you are in DC, what your weather is, because DC is an egregore, effectively, as a spirit. I don't care about the spirit of DC weather. I mean, might be times when I do, but right now I don't. And
Yeah,
I think that's the
it's
confusion.
funny to hear you say the word egregore, but
God, I hate that term. They're still using it. I'm like, why are you guys using this occult word? Like, what is wrong with you people? Occultism is bad. Could we not? But
yes,
now
please not.
they love it. But
so leadership then.
Responsibility. That's the
Taking
difference, right? Like,
responsibility.
I'm going to take responsibility for the results of people following me.
Mhm.
Authorities don't have to do that, right? Because you come to the authority, right, and then you follow the authority. I mean, that's why Sam Harris has so much sway, right? Even though he should have none because he's an idiot, right? Who's just wrong about pretty much everything he says, with a few tiny exceptions, because it's very hard to be consistently wrong.
That would actually be really useful if somebody was always wrong. You could just like make sure to not agree with them as a part of your
I mean, it's useful enough if you're wrong 90% of the time, like Sam Harris is. You can just say, "Oh, I'm just not gonna," right? Or Nietzsche or any Kierkegaard, or like these guys are just wrong about almost everything they're saying, and then people go, "Yeah, but there's 10% good stuff in there," and I'm like, first, you're gonna prove that because I don't believe you, and second, I don't care about 10% of good stuff. When you, by your own admission, thinks this person's a genius, I go, do you really understand it? And if you don't really understand it, how are you discerning the good stuff from the bad stuff and making the claim that there's 10% good stuff? See, there's the problem, right? So if you actually use logic correctly, then you quickly realize you shouldn't listen to these clowns at all, because there's so much stuff they say that's just wrong. Like DC Schindler was talking about, so there's Nietzsche with his will to power. Okay, well, will to power is wrong and a stupid solution and doesn't actually solve the problem and is impossible. So maybe those things indicate that when Nietzsche says will to power, he's wrong, because there's no way he's not wrong about that. And then I'm like, okay, but then he then builds a bunch of stuff on will to power, guys. Well, all of that stuff is derived from something that you can prove in 4 seconds is wrong. So don't follow that nonsense. Look, how hard was that? They completely distinct. You can do the same with Kierkegaard and all the others. Immanuel Kant, like, he's just wrong. His starting axiom is just wrong. But people are following them as if they're a philosophical authority but they're
Mhm.
not leaders because they're not taking responsibility. I mean, some of them are dead, for example. It's hard to take responsibility when you're dead, right? They're not taking responsibility for the results of their books or their actions or anything, right? Because when you look at these so-called modern philosophers, which again, I disagree that there's any such thing, what you'll notice is they have horrible lives. Horrible. I'm like, if that, if you have a philosophy and you're living it out and you have a horrible life, then I know your philosophy is bad. Like, I don't need any more information. I don't need to dig deep, or like, I can just go, oh yeah, well, clearly this isn't the way because
Uh,
it didn't work for you. Like, why would I think it was going to work for someone else?
Right, right. Now, the thing that's interesting to me about the way you're talking about authority is that it seems to be like the sort of thing that could be built bottom up, right? Like
Hmm.
somebody becomes an authority on YouTube,
You
and
do,
maybe they have no business whatsoever becoming an authority, right? And they're just
right?
wrong about everything, but they just keep on building the momentum and people keep on going to them for
That's right.
understanding right there.
Yep. That's
Which is why
exactly
you
what
don't
happened.
wanna have it associated with an office, right? Like office of diocesan bishop, office of pastor,
Hmm.
even though they, might, um, also develop authority along the way. Uh, Now it's interesting, just kind of the etymology of that word. It's linked to authoring, right? Of writing,
Yep.
writing something down, being an author.
DC Schindler mentioned that. And I was like, ooh, that's the most important point right there. Yeah.
I just
You're the
That's
one that's
not the way.
authoring the story.
Yeah, that's, just not the way that it's used in canon law. So,
How's it used in
like,
canon law? Oh, this is fascinating.
it's associated with an office, right? Right,
Yeah.
so, like,
Authority is
the
conveyed
diocese,
through the office. Right.
yeah,
Okay.
right, so, like,
Yeah.
the diocesan
Right.
bishop, for example, has the authority to
Right.
say, "This institution is Catholic,
Right,
and
but
this one
what
is."
you're doing, sure, but what you're doing, and see, this is the difference. This is where what it all comes down to. I hope Corey watches this at some point. I think he'll find it helpful. The office appoints you the author within the domain,
Mhm.
right? And that domain may be more specific than, we'll say, the three big ones we outlined earlier, whatever, doesn't matter, right? And then you are in charge of the story. Now, what have I said over and over again for years? Our main problem is we can't tell a good story from a bad story. So we go on, YouTube, and we follow somebody and they're telling us a bad story, and we don't know because we think Immanuel Kant had something interesting to say once, which is false, by the way. And then we go down that rabbit hole. But then again, we get betrayed because you always get betrayed. Also, there's no way to mediate that if the authority is something that you're following under your own decision making process. In other words, it's not, as canon law says, conveyed to you by virtue of an office, right? And so you're going, oh, he looks like a good author because he wrote a book. Okay, he must know something about the thing he wrote a book about. It's like, are you sure about that? Like, I don't know. Like, I've read a lot of books where I'm like, I
It
don't know
used to
what
be
this
the
guy's
case
talking about, but he's wrong.
it used to be the case that at the very minimum, if somebody wrote a book, that they could sit for a while,
Mhm. Mhm.
but nowadays, it's like that's not even, that's up for grabs. How many
Right.
MDATs are there in this book? How many lists of
Right.
3,
Right. And so you're really not getting much information from the fact that somebody is an author anymore. And again, are they a good author or are they a bad? Because like, somebody posted this on Twitter a while back, and I was just so horrified. I'm like, are you people okay? Like, you must need some like medication or something. They were like, oh well, Harry Potter's good fantasy, and I'm like, Harry Potter is YA. It's young adult. Okay. So these are the same people, by the way. And see, this is what's important. Someday I'll do a video about this, about how to spot this, because it's so clear and it's just hard to explain. These are the exact same people who will lament the newspapers of old, where they were written at a fourth grade reading level. What do you think a YA novel is? Well, okay, it's not written at a fourth grade reading level, but it's also not written at an adult reading level. Okay, that's by definition what it is. So then calling it good blah, right, writing within some genre can never be correct, ever. It can't be correct. It's already wrong. Like, I don't know why this is hard for people to understand. I was horrified. I was like, you know, I think Bethel McGrew is on that thread. I'm like, you should not write anything ever, ever. If you don't understand that basic principle that I just outlined, you shouldn't be authoring anything. You cannot be a good writer if you cannot discern that fact. You can't put this is good fantasy together with a YA novel. I'm sorry. You could say it's a good story or a good set of stories. You could even say the books as a whole constitute an interesting world. You can say all that, right? You could say the world is well constructed, although
you could just say it made an absolute bucket of money. Like that's a metric that we could measure.
And she got most of it, which is very unusual. And I think, people miss that. Like, I don't think people really understand what happened. Like, the authors, first of all, people who wrote books weren't supposed to ever make any money. And publishers weren't
with a vow of poverty.
But even after that, like, publishing houses were not money-making enterprises. It's not that they didn't make money. It's that all the publishing houses until like the 1960s were run by wealthy families. They didn't need the money, and so books were affordable. Now books are actually not affordable, by the way, at least not good ones, right? And
textbooks are especially expensive.
Well, they made an industry out of it with textbooks by gaming and rigging a system. Or a game rigged system, I should say.
Out of all the people to steal from, man, people who don't have any money, like, that's the worst. Right. You steal $1 million from Bill Gates, he's going to be fine. It's still wrong, but he's going to be fine.
Right. Wow. And then you've got like Sabine Hassenfeld, who, refused to write the professor's chapters for him and then got attacked for that refusal. So it's not even the guy's book at that point. He's having other people write it for him. And then she's the one that gets kicked out of academia, roughly speaking. It's like, what is happening? So people don't really understand what's going on. So J.K. Rowling shouldn't be a billionaire or whatever the heck. Like, she shouldn't. Like, the only people that should be authors should be wealthy, because they should be the only ones with time on their hands to write a book.
Did you read that in Aristotle, or did you just like figure that out because he said the exact same thing?
I haven't read any Aristotle at all.
All right. Yeah, he said in order to have a life of contemplation, you need to have leisure, which requires enough wealth to be free of manual labor. You also need to have the virtue to be able to use that spare time well.
Right.
So just being wealthy is not going to be a guarantee of anything.
Right. Well, and that's the problem. People are just looking at what they perceive as the corruption of wealth, which it most certainly is not. It's the corruption of either objectivism, materialism, or individualism, but usually all three. And calling it, oh, this is money's fault. It's like, whatever. Like, you people are dumb. No, I can't even. Right. So this is where we'll say the problem comes in. The problem comes in that you have these people who are not understanding the categories that they themselves use, and then categorizing things according to some other random, not published, not written down anywhere standard. Right. And because they're also, quote, authors, I was like, yeah, I have a Substack too. Does that actually make me an author? I don't know. I mean, when my book comes out in September, then I'll call myself an author. Until then, I'm just gonna say I wrote a book. Right? Once the book launches,
we're both YouTubers as well.
Well, see, and that's the problem. Everybody's squishing everything down. And so what's really happening, one way to look at what's happening is,
Me and Mr. Beast are the same, Mark.
yeah, exactly. But you could take a mosaic of the world, right? And you could cut the mosaic apart into the individual mosaic constituents, which are clear, clean lines, right? Like, okay, we've got clear, clean lines. And then people are presenting that one piece to you with authority, right? And saying this explains the world. And then, of course, it's one piece of a huge mosaic that has thousands of pieces. And then going, see, you can understand everything through the lens of this mosaic, right? And so Alex Hormozy, and I actually like Alex Hormozy, but talk about meaning crisis. Wow. Off the charts. He's going to blow up. He talks about, he's a gym bro. He's a business guy. He tells you how to like make your business profitable and all that, and all his stories and his quote homelessness, which I would not recognize as homelessness at all, by the way, right? And it just turns out like he's a rich kid who rebelled against his father. That's his whole story right there. Done. Right? And I was like, oh no, I know these people. I met them in Harvard Square when I was actually homeless. I was like, these guys aren't homeless. Why are they bitching? Like I'm starving. Like, they're not homeless. What are they talking about? Right? So he was one of those. So I was like, oh, I see. Right? Once you get the history of the person, it's like, I see what's going on here. Right? And he's an authority. Right?
Because he has people who are listening to him and put their
right.
trust in him, at least on a certain domain.
Yeah. He can say, look, I've done all this stuff and it's worked and I'm making money. So if you're a materialist and you're measuring money as the metric of success, then yeah, you should follow him. Like I can't disagree. Also, you're retarded, but I can't fix that. So like if money is your thing, then you should follow a guy like Alex Hormozy for sure. Absolutely. I don't think you'll be able to unless, you know, because all these guys do this. Like you watch the entrepreneur space right now is huge with the snake oil salesman. And some of them are deliberate and some of them aren't. Like it's just, what pattern are people following? They're following the entrepreneurship. Well, who's doing the entrepreneurship thing? Oh, well, the wealthy, basically. The children of the wealthy, the children of the upper middle class, they're all doing the entrepreneurship thing. Why? Because they have the money to do it. I think there's this one guy who's like, well, I've started my business on a shoestring and, you know, and then you listen to his story and he's like, well, yeah, you know, I was in Portugal and then I went to Switzerland and then but I can work anywhere in the world. And I'm like, where did you get the money before you have the income from the business to stay in Switzerland and like hop around various beautiful cities in Europe? And no one thinks about this. And so they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to follow. I'm like, you're not starting where he started. You can't follow that.
Right. So there's, I mean, I've heard some people from a more materialist frame talk about it in terms of what was it, spiritual capital, which might be a good way to bootstrap people upwards. This idea that like, what's this? This was a an article I read, right? And somebody was evaluating, you know, the 7 steps to get out of poverty, right? And somebody like came up with a plan. It's like, you know, if you're born into poverty, you do these 7 things, and they were 7 very sensible things, you know, like make sure you graduate from high school, hold down a job, you know, don't have children until you're, you know, married and have that state, you know, so kind of basic life advice, right? And then there was also some things where it's like, hey, take advantage of these opportunities, take advantage of those opportunities, which are not quite so basic, right? That's like the sort of thing where, you know, a guy who's been doing finance for like 30 years and is good at it would like notice that there's these opportunities for people. And the point was that the person who needs to like benefit from the what you have on offer, you know, some of it maybe they can put into practice, but a lot of it they just don't have the capacity to put that into practice. Like they don't have the habits, they don't have the virtue, they don't have the knowledge, they don't even have like the sense that this would be something that's worthwhile. Everybody around them is doing something completely different, so they need to have like a brand new identity in order to do. So there's, not that like trying to write these articles is necessarily a bad thing, but like just saying, sit down and read this and then you'll be better. It's like, no, life's a little more complicated than that.
Well, it was interesting because I'm very early on in this talk that Corey posted and tagged me on, but TC Schindler and this other guy, they're saying like, well, yeah, some of these people are, they're not really an authority because they're just telling you something you already knew, and I'm like, why would that disqualify you from being an authority? That's not correct at all. That's completely backwards. That's totally wrong. Right. And then they go, yeah, the true authority tells you something you've never heard before, but you can tell it's true or something. And I was like, no, no, no. And it sort of reminded me of this clip. Actually, I just found the clip online today before all this, because I've been looking for it for a while. I'm like, oh, I should just sit down and find this stupid clip. There's a character in Babylon 5 called Zathras. And Zathras is the best character in the whole show. Too bad he's only in a handful of episodes. But at one point, it's a time travel scenario, right? Which, not my favorite thing in sci-fi, but whatever. They do a serviceable enough job with the craziness. So they're explaining to Zathras, the next time you see me, don't say you know me and don't call me the one, right? The Neoplatonic one, I assume. But anyway, these lapsed Catholics are the worst. The worst, Father. They're the worst. He's a lapsed Catholic. So they ask Zathras, do you understand? And Zathras goes, no. Zathras no understand. Zathras not good at understanding. Zathras good at doing. And I'm like, yes. You don't need to vet in some fashion what the authority says to know if they're an authority, right? You go to the authority of your own volition, right? Because you're already submitted and you don't have to think about it. If you have to go to the authority and think about it, you've lost. Like, you've got the worst of both worlds. You've gone to an authority and you're trying to work it out on your own for no reason. You've already been given the answer. It makes no sense. But people do that all the time.
Right. And, maybe the person that they're going to as an authority isn't actually that good at their job. Like that happens sometimes. But usually when you're on the other side of it, right? So I remember one time I was helping a gentleman with an annulment case, and based on the circumstances, we decided to go with a favor of the faith case. You send that to Rome. Pope grants you a favor. You can get married again. Let's not worry about the details right now, right? And then, it's like, we got to do this process and it's going to kind of take a while, but like, this is actually like, I know all of the canon law. And I'm like, this is the best way. If you can do it as a favor rather than as a judicial trial, like it's a lot easier to just ask for the favor. And
right.
The Pope has actually told us the conditions under which he will grant this favor. They're not that terribly common. So since you fit the bill, like we're just gonna ask for the favor, right?
Right.
And then like a few months into it, he like sends me an email, says, well, why do we have to go to Rome? We could do this process. I've been doing my own research, and fortunately I was like, well, if we do this process here in town, we don't know what the outcome's going to be because it could come out in a negative, we need to have sufficient grounds for declaration of nullity. Whereas, if we just go ask the Pope, it might take about as long, actually, probably a little shorter. And the $700 fee, you won't even see that. Our tribunal just takes care of that. You're welcome. So yeah, and I'm sure people who have been in a position of authority where they're actually pretty good at their job, they know why they're doing what they're doing, and somebody comes and quit. I had another one. I was doing a confirmation with the bishop, and the one of the altar boys. He was older, right? He was probably at least a junior in high school, and the pastor told him, and you're going to help wash the bishop's hands when he's done with the confirmation. He really like had that fixed in his mind, and so when I was getting three of the servers to help wash the bishop's hands, because it's when you're a bishop, you can't just wash sacred chrism off your hands with like a just water, right? You need to have lemon and bread and soapy water and a pitcher. But this one's like, I'm the one who's helping wash the hands. I'm like, okay, okay. So you're going to hold on to the bread and the lemon and the soapy water and pour the fresh water over the bishop's hands. And then he got it, and he stopped fighting me at that. But it was just kind of like, I'm the authority. This is my like 20th confirmation in the past 6 weeks. All right, bro. Like, I've got this. Don't worry. So yeah, that's if you pick the right authority, then just do what they say, and you're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
And if you're not, it's on them, because every once in a while I do tell somebody something wrong and I gotta pull it back. But
Yeah, I mean, it's the imperfection that people keep focusing on rather than the affordance. I think the affordance is like so much better than the problems that are created, and they want none of it. They want a perfect world, and ideologies give you a perfect world, which I think is why people are prone to ideology because they so want this perfect world that
mhm,
they're
mhm.
prone to the ideology. And then when you put them in an imperfect situation and go, yeah, well, this is the best we got, they go, but this isn't the perfect world. I want to go back to my ideology.
Yeah, yeah, and there might be an interesting McGilchrist kind of conversation around that with maybe an over dominance of the left hemisphere and its virtual play box function that it has, or you could just say they got too much imagination and not enough dirt under their fingernails.
No, I think they have poor formation or actually non-existent formation. That I think is the real thing we're suffering from is 2 generations of non-existent formation.
You
And
know,
it's
at the
just
time,
attenuating.
at the time, every time my mom said that life isn't fair, like I was I was
Yeah.
annoyed by it because I wanted life to be fair. But now
Fair.
that my expectations that life's not going to be fair, I'm a lot happier. When I see the
Exactly.
unfairness, it's like, life isn't fair. And then you just move on and see if you can do some
Right.
good. Um,
Video games give you that weird flat world set of expectations about universality and perfection as well, right? And it's ironic, right? Because they're all obsessed with glitches in the game and bugs. And I'm like, "Do you guys not? Really? You're not?" All the interesting things happen in the imperfection. You whatever. Like, I
it
can't
depends on
even with
who.
these people.
If we're looking at gamers, it might depend on who you're talking to. Some people get like really lost in the story and the world, which is
I
a
just
little bit different than the speed running kind of approach to it.
when you're interacting with something that is linear and discrete and perfect and universal, those are the signals going into your head, and that's what's forming you. If you don't have an alternative formation, which is my argument, it's not the video games, right? Like I grew up with video games. They didn't have any of these effects on me at all. At all. I was a I was a Space Invaders champion. Like I could flip that game. We can flip the game. Whatever. I got pretty decent at asteroids too. I could flip those
But
games.
it's you would have something that you were contrasting that with, right? Like,
I'm also out on the sailboat.
yeah, yeah, very different worlds, right? Yeah, so if you're at least like doing some sports or tag or
I'm doing sailing, I'm doing martial arts, I'm in the Boy Scouts for a year, I'm at 4-H for a summer,
yeah, you
right?
get a
Like
lot of
I'm
different
doing all this stuff.
formation
We're
and you're like,
raising we're raising chickens from eggs, right? Like
mhm, mhm,
that's a man, that's one of them process. You're like, what is right? And not all the kids' eggs made it, man. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
mhm, mhm.
it happens.
I mean, that's the stuff I really remember from kindergarten, right? Like when we got the little plastic cups and we got the paper towels wet, we put the seed in there and we put them all by it, and then
Mhm.
like we could watch the bean plant sprout
Yep.
and like watch the roots come down and start to, it's like, oh man,
Grow a bean. That's
yeah,
what
grow
Sally
a
Joe
bean.
says. Grow a bean.
Like
Yeah,
it's
but
it's pretty helpful, even though I didn't become a farmer.
you learn about hierarchy and you see the pattern, right? You see the pattern of the you can say they're the same, but they're absolutely not that similar. The roots versus the branches. They're very, very different, actually, right? Even though they have the same quality, which is spreading out, we'll call it or something. They have that similar quality, but they're actually very different, right? And they work differently too, right? 'Cause they're opposite sides of the pump, effectively. The transport is the trunk, right? And so of whatever, it could be the stem or the trunk, right? And so once you sort of understand that pattern, and it's not a linear discrete pattern, and the results of four classmates growing a bean are not the same. And
Mhm.
when you get a sense for that, and if that's what you're also formed with, the video games don't have the enchantment effect. It doesn't work. Right? Because
Right,
video
right.
games are nice, and every once in a while I like to play them. But when it's nice out, I
Yeah,
mean,
you're just doing that to kill time, right?
I would well, no. Sometimes I want to relax.
Yeah, okay, like
In
as a type
that
of
way, there's
relaxation.
different ways to relax, but one of them is, yeah, I want to kick ass in World of Tanks right now. Or go build something. They actually shut it down, stupid Disney. Build something in the little Disney magical world thing, right? Yeah, I want to do that, right? But I don't want to, or Minecraft would be the other equivalent, right? But
Mhm, mhm,
but those are different. Those are different things, right? Like one's destruction and one's building. One's
mhm.
team based and one's individualistic, right? Um, and some people, and I do this more now, but I'm not big on it, would rather go sit on the beach in the sun. And you and I have done that. So obviously I do that and I enjoy that, right? But it's not my
Not an
first
every
go-to
sort
for
of thing.
relaxation either.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't wanna do it every day, but when it's February and I'm not in North Dakota,
That was a once in a lifetime opportunity right there. Let's hope they do it again in February, only in Charleston this time. So
oh,
I got my
Charleston would also be nice.
fingers crossed. Yeah, yeah. Well, the water should be warm all year round down there, so I haven't
Yeah,
verified.
I'm the guy from the North who's, like, swimming in the Atlantic in January and having a great time while everybody's just looking at me saying, "He must be from the North." None
It'll
of the
be fine.
locals are swimming at that time. It's like, "Yeah, it's 72 degrees out, the water's, 65 degrees, this is great." No,
So,
I'm
yeah, I mean, I think that people are massively confused about these things because of this video game reality thing, and they can't understand authority at all. And even DC Schindler, who I like the guy, I think he's pretty good. Like, he is not doing this justice. And I think the reason why is because they're not talking about the inevitability of hierarchy because we live in a created order. We were
Mhm.
born into a created order. Like, sorry, I don't know what to tell
And
you.
some people, so we could even say that some people are going to, be in a better position to gain authority than others, like, on the basis of natural talent, on the basis of opportunities, on the basis of the formation they received and the
Right.
opportunities that they had early on.
But that's true of everything. See, this is where the problem
Yeah,
comes in.
yeah.
Like, this is the realization that I had when I was very young, right? So I'm bopping along and I'm teaching myself how to program and I'm pretty freaking good at it, right? And I level up by teaching everybody in the high school magnet program or junior high. No, it was grammar school. Yeah, it was like sixth grade or fifth
Visual
grade or
Basic,
something.
or, had you moved
Teaching
on?
everybody else basic
Yeah.
on the I wonder if they were 64s. They were probably Commodore 64s. So I'm leveling all these skills up, right? And then I run into what run into is kind of the wrong way to think about it, but like I find out about Matt Dillon. Now Matt Dillon's already everywhere, right? I kind of know him. And then he writes a C compiler by himself from scratch. And because I was always measurement, very young age, measure this, measure that, right? Very measure. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to measure this against all the other compilers for the Amiga. And his is faster. And I'm like, here are corporations. One of those corporations had already written multiple C compilers. And here's this guy who smoked them. And it's free. And it has better tooling. And like everything about it's better. And it writes better code. And it does it faster. Like everything about his, it's called DICE, Dillon's Integrated C Environment. Everything about that is better than all the commercial products. All of them. And if you combined all the best qualities of them, they wouldn't be as good as this thing. That's how good it was. And this guy is completely next level. I'm nowhere near this, right? And I'm like, I'm never going to be able to do that. I mean, maybe I could get close enough that, you know, I could have a seat at the table, right? But I'm like, I'm never going to be able to do that. There's no way that I can think in C code at that level. I can think in C code, but not at that level, right? In order to be able to, because I knew what it took, right? Hey, David. So I knew what it took. So I was like, okay, the world, yeah, this is the way the world is. Like, there's nothing I can do about that. I'm just not the guy. So I'm not going to try to be the world's best software engineer because there's no way. I'm just not for whatever set of reasons, right? And I had early exposure to computers, so that wasn't it, right? There's a native inborn way of thinking in abstractions that I just don't have at that level, right? That he has. I mean, he must dream in C code. There's no other way.
Yeah. I've heard of people dreaming in Latin when they're studying it. I suppose there's no reason why it couldn't go into C code as well.
You dream video games if you play them. Like people, like when I played Quake, I would have Quake dreams. What is
I had a very unpleasant Skyrim dream once, so maybe I'll talk about it some other time. I'm really curious about the convolence then of offices and authority, right? Which we touched on much earlier, and sort of the reason. And we're, you know, I'm in canon law school right now, so we're going to talk about canon law stuff. You've got the diocesan bishop there. He's been appointed by most of the time in the world now free conferral, but it's been done differently in different times and places. And so the reason that his authority would work is mostly on account of the traditions and the structure of the Catholic Church, right? That, like, you know, gosh, you have to have a bishop, right? Like, we're not going to just sit here and, like, you know, all hold hands and everybody gets a puppy and a piece of candy. Like, somebody needs to be making the decisions here. And everybody agrees that this person is now the bishop, you know, and like, could there possibly have been a better candidate for bishop? Yeah, you know, that's entirely possible. The Pope's men aren't infallible, and episcopal appointments are not the object of infallibility. But everybody agrees that, like, this guy, he's the diocesan bishop. And so, you know, if we need permission for something, if we want to do something or not do something, and it's within his authority, direct supervision, or something that he has to be vigilant over, then we have to go ask him. And so it's everybody in the community agreeing that this person has this office that ends up bestowing the authority upon them.
No, that's backwards.
Well,
this is my problem with DC Schindler. Like, this is the problem. It's middle out, individualistic, and materialistic. So let me try this. So the way they were talking about it, they were saying, like, so you have this guy, and I'm like, no, you don't. You can't start there. That's middle out, right? Because we are in the middle of the creation story. It's that simple. It's not hard. We're in the middle of the creation story, right? We're in the middle between heaven and earth. Like, we're in the middle. So if you talk about it from your personal private perspective, then it's all wrong automatically. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. You're already wrong. He's completely wrong. So there's a created order, right? And we are trying to discover so that we can conform to the created order. It's that simple. The created order was here first. We live within it. Right? Therefore,
Right,
it's
right.
bigger than us. You can invoke egregore if you want. I don't. That's stupid. Whatever. It doesn't matter, right? The thing bigger than us that was here
Right.
first.
The church,
that
the
we-
church is here. The church is of divine institutions. That's
Right.
where we're coming for the solution to the
Right.
problem here.
So there's no agreement and disagreement on authority. Either you submit to the authority or you're rebelling. It's really
Right,
it.
right.
There's really only
Yeah.
two options, right? And so to give you an example of this, I know I've told the story before. I'm just going to tell it again because it's relevant here, right?
That's
So
the prerogative of age. So
yeah. So every once in a while, I go to the OCA church across the river that my friend Kira goes to, right? And Father Ignatius is there, and he knows Jonathan Peugeot. So he and I, we can talk because he knows Peugeot's work and he knows Peugeot, right? He's had dinner with him and stuff. Like he knows him, right? And so the last time I was there, which was way too long ago, unfortunately for me, he started talking to me. He said, "Oh yeah, he mentioned C.S. Lewis's Abolition of Man," and I was like, "Oh, I haven't read it." And he goes, "You haven't read The Abolition of Man? Drop whatever projects you're doing and go read that book now." And then he's, "Oh, I'm kidding, whatever." But I went home and ordered the book and read it when I got it. Like it wasn't that it's not that hard. I didn't even ask him why. He said to do it, and I did it. Like it's not right. Like there's no
that one's not written at a fourth grade reading level.
and it wasn't right, and it was yeah, that's a tough read actually. And it wasn't a question of, well, I agree that he's the authority. I'm already there in his church.
Right, right.
Like the agreement happened as the result of my mode of participation. It's not something we state, and it's not right.
Right.
So that's the agreement only comes about as the result of the thing
Of the
on top of
participation.
you that you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
conform or agree with.
So here's my question mark, right? I
Uh-huh.
understand that. I understand it makes perfect sense. That the authority comes from Christ ultimately, mediated through the succession of apostles, and that
Mhm.
when people are participating in authority and we're participating in the life of the church, that's when they're most likely to just get along as well as they can. Are you
Right.
sure you want to use the same word for both the Holy Bishop of Fargo and Vaush?
Yes, because there's a leadership in a bishop, and there's no leadership. See, this is like this. Because we've carved this up, and maybe we shouldn't have carved it up. Like I'll make that argument all day long. Yeah, science evil. Don't carve things up. Don't make ontologies, right? Or at least make them very carefully with, and we're not doing that. Like right now, people are just carving everything up. I mean, people are calling themselves agnostic atheists. Like that's not a possible configuration. You're misunderstanding the usage of language at some point, and it's definitely that's past that point, right? Like you can't say the philosophy of science. Like that's ridiculous. You don't know what you're jibber jabber. Like this isn't a way to talk about the world. Science is a type of philosophy, or actually, the word science. They are using the word science in the way that Plato used the word philosophy. They're just dumb and don't know it. Sorry. Like you can look at this, you can look this up. Like I'm not making it up. Right? And so the problem becomes when you have an authority, or how about this? Somebody that people follow, right? Or something that people follow, right? Because some people go, "Oh, Neoplatonism is my authority." They don't say it that way, but that's how they act, right? So Neoplatonism is made up, as we've established many, many times. So that's what I'm following. Okay, fair. Neoplatonism is now your authority. but that authority doesn't have a conveyance from above, and it doesn't have any leadership with it. It don't have to be the same thing, right? So one way to identify this is to say, okay, you're following Neoplatonism, right? You're an acolyte of Neoplatonism. This is the way John Vervaeke talks, by the way. He doesn't use his words, but like this is a pure, accurate, truthful description of what he's actually saying in simpler terms, right? He's a follower of Neoplatonism. That's why he believes in the many and the one, or whatever nonsense he thinks Neoplatonism actually is, which is not, does not exist, right? If you ask him, okay, where does this go? Okay. There is no where does this go. So what does that mean?
Right.
There's no final cause, right? And therefore there's no leadership. And so you have an authority separated out from a leadership. That's a problem for me. This is why it takes me 2 seconds to figure these things out every time, because I can ask one question. It's not always that question, but I can always ask one question and see if they have the right chain of stuff, right? And it, you can't do it in only one question, but almost always they're only using one thing. They're only using authority, or they're only using leadership. So you could say, like, this is how I'm fairly sure about. I'm not 100% positive, but I'm fairly sure about this one, right? This is how I can say with high confidence level, right? People who are talking about postmodernism and neo-Marxism and aren't leaders, like they're not stepping up, like the aforementioned Jordan Peterson that Ixnan's talking about, actually are ideologues who believe that charisma is what corrupted the perfect idea. Now, to be fair to them, I think they realize, well, you can't get around charisma, and therefore you can't have this ideal, but they're still idealists. And the way you know that is that they cast everything as power and leadership, and they never talk about authority. Because you could say, what gave evil mustache dictator the authority to become the elected, by the way, multiple times leader, and then was elected dictator for life, by the way? See, they always leave that part of the story out for some weird reason. Well, how did he have the authority to take the reins of leadership? Right? Well, that came from not only the German people, that came from the entire world. Nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to go down that road. But actually, that's, if you read the contemporary sources, it's 100% clear that that's what happened. There's no question about it. And the way he did it, Peterson talks about some of the materialist individual things that he did, right? Like being able to hold his hand up in a car for 4 hours and crazy stuff like that, right? And he undersells that, probably because he doesn't actually know what I know, what I've read, right? And fair enough. Nobody should even know what I've read on that subject, because the stuff I know about that, it would frighten you to know that stuff is even a thing. You want enchantment? Oh, I know all about enchantment, right? Because he knew all about enchantment, and I actually studied all that, right? But it's also the conveyance of having gotten stuff done. Because the big difference here is that guy got stuff done for people.
Mm-hmm.
Like
not for everybody.
No, but you never get stuff done for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the perfectionism sneaking back in. It's like, well, yeah, someone's got to suffer. Sorry, that's just going to be the way it is, because we're going to change the game. You shake the thing up, and right, you reorder something, and there's always going to be leftover pieces. And so the game is not no leftover pieces. That's dumb. That makes you an ideologue every single time. The game is which leftover pieces, and what do we do about that? Because it's two pieces, it's not one, right? It's not one question, it's two questions. Can we
Mhm.
identify who's getting left out, and what can we do in recompense? Because we have to leave somebody out. So we
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
do something in recompense, but we also have to identify them first, right? Everybody reduces things down to one thing. So Jordan Peterson probably, whether he himself sort of realizes this or not, talks about this era or error, which is the correct way to talk about it, in an individualist frame, right? Maybe not a materialist frame, even, but although I might argue that he does, but whatever, definitely an individualist frame. But what he's leaving out is the influence that happened as the result of a proper authority. And the authority got elevated up to leadership. And then you could subsequently make the argument that when you have a leader and a single authority and they are the same person or the same office, that's what tyranny is. That would be an interesting argument to make. I would tend to lean that way, right? But people don't talk that way about it because they're busy stuck in the individualism or the materialism or the objectivism, usually all three, right? Or some combination.
When you actually read, let's say, the way the German people were understanding their leadership their leadership, what was going on there, like the National Socialists were quite clear about this. Is like we're operating on the Führer principle, you know, and like this
Yeah.
guy's in charge, and we all follow him, and that's it.
Right.
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 Whereas
But that's
I think a more like about, you know, like and I happen to have a certain fondness for the way our government's structured, where it's like, well, yeah, we've got, you know, our 4-year king, but we've also got Congress, and Congress should be able to rein him in. And then the courts can also, you know, we got it broken up a little bit. And then like the government's not allowed to like touch the churches. That has to be like its own independent authority, you know, but they don't get
right.
like any divisions, you know, so like kind of multiple
And the
places
feds
spreading
can't
this
touch
out.
the states, and the
Right. Yeah. There
states
should
have a
be.
limited amount of control over the local, whether
Yeah.
it's county or town, right? So we've got
So
a
lots of
very
different
deep
little authorities to just keep things balanced out. You know, I'm happy to
we've
be a
got a
fan.
very deep system. And yeah, there's been a lot of dust up over the Epstein case, and I had to point out to somebody today, finally, I understand your concerns, and I understand that you think that Epstein's Island, because it is U.S. territory, falls under some mystical federal jurisdiction. But you need to go look up the age of consent for the federal government. Okay. And when
Oh,
you're done not finding that, you can explain to me where the legal case is. Oh, but that's why they didn't go after these people, because they don't have legal standing to do so. Oh, no. Right. Why do you think he did it on the island, which is rather inconvenient at the end of the day? Ah, right, because he understood that there was a limited legal liability to doing things that way, right? Now you could counter argue with, well, we have the authority to do whatever we want. And I would say, yes, but everyone's afraid to do that now, even though they should, right? And they're afraid to do it because of Mustache Man, effectively. And I'm like, no, you don't understand, right? Because you're not looking at the whole story. Where did that story start? That story's, well, there's two places where the story started. You go all the way back to Napoleon, right? Or you can just go back to Weimar Republic and say, so you have this mess and it's bad. It's worse than anything ever that anyone's seen previously, for real, right?
mhm.
It's oh my goodness, the French Revolution all over again, almost, right? It's pretty bad, except there's a lot less killing, and well, thank God for that, right? Um, but then someone comes in and fixes it all for real, actually fixes it all with a real plan to making sure that those fixes sustain, with a lot of help from every guilty country that did nothing about the Treaty of Versailles, May they all burn in hell, and I'm sure they will. Right? So, well, that's pretty powerful. And then it's like, well, this guy, he's done the work, he's had the results, he's got this plan. He needs the, we've already granted him our authority. All he needs now is our vote, right, to become the leader. And to some extent, he's already led people, right? He's already led the way in a way, right? And they're like, okay, this guy's great. And the problem with socialism, I do a video on Navigating Patterns called The Trick of Socialism. You should check it out. Problem with socialism is it just lies about the way the world is structured, right? It posits a flat world where, because you and your neighbor can work something out in theory, which is also not true.
Sometimes, every once in a while, you can actually work something out.
No, most of the time, if you handle it correctly, you can work something out with your neighbor. Most of the time. Right. But the most important things, that's never true for. And see, that's right, because it's an asymmetry. There's two asymmetries. There's one in, well, very rarely there are important things that come up, and they're very rare. That's an asymmetry because they're rare. Right. But there's another asymmetry. They're more important than all the other things that come up all the time that aren't a problem. Oh, like it's really annoying, actually, right? It's like, why is life shaped like this? That's the Cauchy curve, the Pareto distribution that Peterson talks about. That's what it is, except it's multidimensional. And this is what Peterson doesn't understand because he lives in a flat world. It's like, oh, not only are they rare events, but they're also super important events. And so it's the 90-10 rule, with an added dimension for real, like mathematically, map it in math. Oh no, right. Oh no, indeed. I don't even know what that's called. There might be a name for. I'll have to ask Bill or somebody at some point. So the fact that is true means that you need this hierarchical structure to mediate. They were talking about mediation. Again, they were talking about mediation incorrectly. I'm like, DC Schindler did a reasonably good job, but the other guy was just confused. It's like mediation is already a participation. It's already both ways. By definition, mediation is two people or more sitting down, right? It was weird. He's like, well, yeah, but there's a way in which the mediation is also run by the other. It's like yes, of course, what mediation means, but nobody knows what words, how to define them or what they mean in context anymore. It's poor comprehension, right? So when you understand, oh, there's an authority, there's a mediation, right? All authority is mediated because if you have no followers, you can't be an authority, right? And so it's dependent upon a relationship with a certain quality. This is why everything is the intimacy crisis. Problem solved, right? So once you understand that, it's like, oh, okay. So what's the proper way to, we'll say, create a valid authority that doesn't immediately corrupt the way Mustache Man corrupted or Stalin corrupted? Oh, well, you have an authority outside or above the governance or government, which is the implementation of a type of governance that helps you in that process, right? And then and that is also mediated, right? Because in the past, when things actually worked, we'll say pre-beheading of the king, when everything worked, the church couldn't do certain things, and so it would have a mediation with the government. It also crowned all the kings. So, right? There's these spheres of influence and authority and they change a little bit too. Right? So they weren't burning people at the stake. They didn't have to. And that's not their thing.
No, our thing's mercy. However, if some
you should only pray for justice. That's my new theory.
What about for yourself?
I only pray for justice for myself. I have no fears. I don't.
Well, yep. I guess that explains why you're not in any hurry to go get baptized.
I might be baptized. I have no idea.
Well, if you had the fear of the Lord, and thought that there was maybe something to atone for, you'd want to get to the bottom of it. So
Yeah, but I'm okay with justice because I'll take responsibility for my actions. I'm fine with that. If I do something and it has consequences, I'm like totally okay. It's everybody else who freaks out about that. I'm like, well, it must suck. I don't live in that hell. Thank you very much.
Mark
I
is
don't
why
know.
people
Is
pray
that
for
true?
others. All right, Mark. Good luck with that. Good luck with that.
I think it's gonna happen either way, but whatever. I think everyone's gonna get a bunch of justice. I think there's a reason why the Republic is about justice, even though it posits a city and government and the order of a society and strange things that seemingly have nothing to do with justice, but actually, um, okay, yeah. I mean, so I think that when you understand authority in that way and how it's conveyed and the things that last, we'll say, outside of a single person, which Germany did not have because the authority outside had collapsed. It had already collapsed, right? There was no, there was no Holy Roman Empire anymore, right? And so what are we doing? What are we going to do? So it emerged from the bottom, right? And this is why this is why emergence is good is dangerous. All the evidence we have says emergence is not good, right? And it's not always 100% bad, but it's 99.999% always 100% bad. So, right? And that's why when people talk like that, it's it's dangerous. It's dangerous. But that's what the Petersons of the world are doing. This is why, as near as I can tell, maybe I'll ask the AI again. He doesn't have a definition of hierarchy. So he says the word hierarchy, which is great. It's a huge upgrade. I'm very grateful. But he doesn't actually have a definition of it. So that's going to be a problem. But I'm gonna maybe record my hierarchy video later tonight when it cools down in here because I've been afraid to do too much work today because
You don't want to
the
roast the
house is not very
computers.
cool. It's just everything's roasting. It was 90 degrees before 10 a.m. It was like unusually warm. It was so warm that at one point I just got up. I think it was like 3:30, and I went to Sarah and I said, "It's ice cream o'clock," and she was just confused, but got her stuff and hopped in the car with me to go get ice cream. And then when we got to the ice cream shop, it was 102 degrees, and I was like, "Yeah, it was definitely ice cream o'clock." So
yeah, that's what we get for living here, huh?
I'm okay with it occasionally, and ice cream o'clock is a good thing. And then she was like, "Well, thank you for ice cream," and I was like, "I had nothing to do with it. It was ice cream o'clock." I just like you gotta obey the ice cream o'clock. Like I don't understand.
That's no
Still,
point in arguing with it. It has authority over you. When ice cream o'clock comes, you obey. It's
exactly.
simple
That's
as.
exactly the way I treated it. Like that would this is all before I read any of this authority stuff today. These days are very strange for me. I like
I
it. I'm
actually,
fine, but it's weird.
I actually literally had the thought, right? I don't know where I was where I had this thought. It was like, well, if anybody has the possibility of becoming the Ubermensch, it's Mark. And he's told us that that's impossible. So it must be impossible.
It's not possible. It's not possible. It's a ridiculous idea that such a thing would be a thing. But I appreciate the deep compliment. One of my friends actually I'm quite frightened of this, but uh he this guy is ridiculously brilliant, right? So in school, he decided to learn German so he could read Nietzsche in his original language. And I was like, "You did what?" Like, who does that, right? So he's also a heavy math guy. And so he told me once, you understand Nietzsche better than anybody else I know. You deeply understand him. And I was like, what? And I think maybe I've read Thus Spake Zarathustra. That's about it. If I'm not 100% sure I read it, but if I've read any Nietzsche, it's that book, because I know I have that one. Like, that one's in the shed somewhere, I bet. But like, and I'm not sure I read it either, but it's like, yeah, I know what's going on with these guys. This isn't that hard. You can derive it yourself if you actually stick to logic, which a lot of them don't, unfortunately. But you also have to be able to extend the logic out. Like, John Vervaeke's great, right? He talks about distributed cognition. Okay, John, what about distributed cognition through time? Wouldn't that look a lot like an egregore, do you think? Or at least it would
You're
have.
using that word over and over again. I thought we were done with it.
Well, that's how they talk, right? But like,
Yeah, but you're talking to me.
But
you're talking to me, Mark.
I have to make fun of them. Like, it's a moral imperative.
Well, I'm going to continue to make fun of you for that.
That's fine. But
I don't want the bishop asking me about egregores. That's what I really don't want. It's like, it's just a cult term. I don't use it. I don't even know why Mark's using it. It's stupid. We both agree that it's stupid, but he's doing it for some reason. Like, I can't figure this out.
That's fair. You can play Mickey the Dunce. Yeah, I'm just doing it because that's the term they keep using. And I find it hysterical that they can't just know the origin of the term and then figure out, like, oh, they just don't want to use the word spirit and soul. They are allergic to those words, like no one in this earth is allergic to anything else. Like, it's bizarre to me that they won't touch either of those two words. They just won't. They will sooner die.
Even if Dr. Vervaeke was like the spiritus, or the pneuma, right?
Yeah.
Like it, because like sometimes, and I think he does make a decent point, like the words that we have now are a little bit hard to use because of linguistic confusion. So like, let's just go back to pronouncing it Latin just to mix people up. So you could say the spiritus. And,
can I kick Ixon forever?
I just want to come on and say I agree with you both so much.
Hey, Ron, it's good to see you. I'm glad you agree. That's nice.
Oh, I mean, it was really, I was feeling stupid. I'm like, wow, these guys are talking egregore and subtle bodies. I'm like, dude.
Subtle body. It's another one that bothers me. Yeah. What are you doing?
Well, and then I'm like, and then I'll like, okay, cue the banjos. I'm like, are y'all talking about demons? Like,
yeah,
are we okay with that word? And I'm like angels, demons, spirits. I'm like, that makes it simple, unless, and I will say the word wooey. I think.
Yeah. Well, they use the word woo instead of just using a perfectly serviceable word that everyone already has. They're just allergic to a bunch of this language.
Okay, so why is and I feel like part of the service I brought to the corner, and maybe not a service, but I talk about that all the time, and I'm like House of Woo. Let's talk about angels, demons, possessions, just. But anywhere else, it has to be egregore, which really confuses me, or subtle bodies.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the problem, Ron. Is this is basically a flood of literacy language problem, where they did not learn in a reasonable way, we'll say, what those, we'll call them Christian words, actually not only define as and describe as, but mean, right? I mean, meaning's tricky, I know, but it's as close as I can get, right? So when they describe egregore, they're describing at least some aspect of spirit. and they're not admitting to it because they don't like that language because that language isn't scientific enough for them. But they see those things because those like that still happens. Right? There is still spirits, we'll call them. And they don't. There we go. Ed Gregor.
What?
There he is. That's Ed Gregor.
Oh, what the dude? That looks like it should be on South Park.
I know. Sally did a great job with it. There we go. See, his name is Ed Gregor. It's right there on his name tag. So that's how I know.
Gosh.
Isn't that great?
What does this represent? I see. It's like that.
Well, it's
what
a
is it
demon.
called?
Like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
right, obviously. But that's the this is the brilliance of Sally Joe when she's in art mode, right? But like that's what they're doing. They're saying, all right, we don't like this Christian language. We don't like
Right.
these Christian concepts. So we are going to science this. I'm going to
Right.
science the hell out of this, you know?
Right.
And
Right.
so they use their science words. Their science words run out because science words are all material. And all the things they're trying to describe are not material, right? And so they run out of language. And then they go, oh no, what are we going to do? Well, we need to control the language because we're all postmoderns. And so we're just going to trot out this old Greek term and corrupt the Greek language, and nobody will notice because nobody knows Greek or Latin or whatever, right? Like John was using religio for the longest time. Obviously, Stephen.
Well, yeah. Computational. What is it? Explosiveness.
Combinatorial explosion.
People. That's
Combinatorial
yes.
explosion.
Okay, is that a real thing or is that just another?
No,
It's
it
a
is-
mathematical term,
convoluted word?
certainly.
It's a real thing. What
Oh,
it
is it?
says is, no. Combinatorial explosion is really easy. What it says is your stupid materialism doesn't work to describe the world, moron. That's actually what it said. I mean, I'm being technical. Like I'm actually being technical. It means you can't use math to understand the world. Period. End of statement. That's all it
You
means.
take apart.
It means,
And
if you
I
split
don't
the
mean to-
world up,
I'm
then
actually
you try to
learning
fit
here.
it back together, you can't do it.
So can you give me the word again? I'm almost like doing an etymology of it. It's common and
Combinatorial
pronounce it for me?
explosion, right? So what it means is that the
Combinatorial.
combinations of the parts we've arbitrarily made because science do not describe the wholeness of the world or of the phenomena we're trying to understand. In other words, the parts don't equate to the whole because the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. If you're not retarded, you start
This just
knowing that the
reminds me of-
whole can be greater than the sum of the parts, and you never run into this problem because you realize science is all about parts. And therefore, it cannot ever, under any circumstances ever, describe a whole. It can't do it. It's not possible for science to describe a whole because
Okay.
it's all about dissection.
Okay, and if you're going with the because that okay, it's I'm kind of getting a grip. So is the word worth learning?
It depends what you're
Just
doing,
asking.
Ron. I use it all the time, and I use it as a way to effectively. Well, I'm using it two ways, right? First of all, love using it because I'm just shoving it so far where the sun don't shine to those morons that it just brings me joy. Like I'm just going to tell you one of my many sins right there. That's one of the big ones, right? But also.
There's a priest right there, Mark. Talk to him.
I know. But using their language to explain things to them is useful
Right.
because they don't have any alternative language. And what they're doing is they're using terms like distributed cognition, right? And not understanding what that implies because they're not making the next step. Because they're very methodical, right? We're going to do one step at a time and understand this one step. And I'm like, no. There's a created order, and the whole is obvious, and you can just do that, and you can skip all the science stuff, because we did for almost all of human history. We had no science and everything ran great. Now we have science and things aren't running great. No one's picking up on this, huh? Is it really that mysterious? I don't know.
So, and one thing, and I'm asking you, I'm not telling you, I'm asking for your opinion on my opinion. And dude, I hate saying it, but I'll say it. I'm concerned about a lack of love in the space. And because I'll try to be as specific as I can be.
You mean caring?
I see.
Ron, is caring a better
Yeah,
word?
maybe. Okay. Yeah. I see people who have minds that are like scalpels, sharp. But I'm like, dude, what is, I'll give you why I'm saying this. I had a dream, and in the dream, there's a stone I think called it's a black stone. It's when you break it, obelisk, or it's like glass. It's one of the sharpest obsidian or onyx or obsidian. One of those two. Yeah, it's one of those. It's the sharpest material around, and obsidian, it was a piece of that was. What's that? Well, anyhow, I'll go on. So it was on a scalpel. It looked like a scalpel, but the scalpel handle a huge grip on it, and it was all black. And what I realized, there was a lot that the razor part, the tongue, the speech, the intellect, was incredibly sharp, but the motivating force behind it was brutal. Brutish. It was not surgical. It wasn't specific. Well, and also it seemed more like a military thing than a surgical thing.
When you have a mind,
big handles.
Yeah, but when you have a mind that's sharp, all you can do is dissect things with it.
Yeah.
You can't care with a sharp mind.
Okay.
It's not possible by the construction of the created order. You get one or the other, right? And you can either draw things together in a wholeness or dissect them, but you can't do both at the same time. And it's fair to say there's a time to dissect things, right? But also the primary mode should be the caring that knits the world together into a whole.
Right. Yeah. Okay. See,
right. They're all hammers.
And I've seen scalpels. Hammers, at least I know. But yes, I do agree with you.
Hammer versus nail thing, right? They're all scalpels looking for something to divide.
Yeah.
That's what they are. That's why they talk about emergence.
Because I'm not coming against having a sharp mind. I want to be careful. What I'm seeing is, I've seen people spiritually get hurt, in my opinion, in conversations that they take apart and cut, and I'm like, dude, and it's not everybody. Don't get me wrong.
No, some
I'm sorry,
people.
Go ahead.
Yeah. There's just certain things you don't need to say to some people.
Right.
And it's like,
right.
So it's just like, that's not useful there. Even if it's, technically true, it's like, this isn't actually serving the person well here. So sometimes I just keep my mouth shut. The person says, there's somebody that I interact with here in Washington, D.C., and we get along just fine. And I think if this person worked for me, we would do nothing but fight for 4 to 6 months, and then they would leave, right?
Right.
But there's no need for me to lean into the fact that I would want things done very differently if I were in charge here. Like what are we doing here, right? Yeah. I'm here for 2 months. I'm just going to roll with the way things are done here. I'm not going to try and why would I highlight the disagreement there? So that's just a little thing, right? Where it's just like, we're just not going to worry about that right now. And it is especially if people are in like a spiritually vulnerable position, like you got to be really careful of what you're drawing their attention to, because you can always deconstruct
Yeah.
stuff, right? And you could
Right.
always just sit there and take
Yeah.
stuff apart. And every once in a while, that's a useful thing to do. But like if somebody's really in a struggling position, like you got to try and get them back together. So you just
Right.
like, hey,
Yeah.
focus on the Lord, focus on looking up, focus on the things that you can influence, focus on building good habits, and like don't worry about all of this critique business that's going on out there, and
If I
it might
may.
be, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, please. Finish
Yeah,
your
yeah.
thought.
The might be case is that people aren't trying to like destroy other people, but they're a little bit foolish with the powers of their mind and don't have the appropriate discernment for the way they
Yeah,
should be speaking.
Right.
and
Well,
and I
and-
want to make sure, like everyone who's commenting, you guys, and I just want to say this: you guys don't. He doesn't play around here. Okay, no one. For anyone watching, I want to say it's no one here or interacts on a regular basis. It's just I saw these two superpowers once get in contact, and one guy, and like they don't come around often. One guy lost, and the other guy just kept going, and he didn't realize the deconstruction, the division, and I'm like, dude, you need to
Yeah.
stop. Like, I don't even
Right.
understand what you guys are talking about, but this is, and so because this is interesting. I think you guys will understand this. I came from the mega woo world, spirits, angels, demons, like it's my wheelhouse. But because I've been here for about a year and a half, I've learned to use my intellect in spiritual matters a lot more than I ever have. It off. And I don't know how to describe it other than, well, no, actually I do. I can give you a real world example. I had a moment this weekend where I was around my mom, and who had her 95th birthday. And one of the people in my family came at me out of the middle of blank and nowhere, goes, so who did you vote for last time? And would you vote for him again? And now here's something. Now my heart, as a father, and Mark, I'll share this with you and the kids in the classroom. I got hit with a spirit of fear because I didn't want to drag my mom, who has Parkinson's, into a hostile environment because I didn't want to damage her mind.
Right.
Because I think
Right.
stress. And so then this person, my family member, goes, and so my heart's actually, it's like 120 BPM or more, and it was a spirit of fear. And I'm like, but my main mind kicked in and go, no, don't respond to it. Just write it out. And so then they ask my mom, they go, well, Ron voted for, what do you think? And going to my mom, and my mom just goes, I don't want to get involved. And everything just deflated.
Yep.
And but there was a moment where I felt the fear hit, and I wanted to respond out of fear. And in my mind, I allowed my mind to really, it's a very different way for me. Like I was experiencing this profound negative demon, but I allowed my mind to navigate through some rough waters, and it wound up pretty good. So I think the intellect, I heard this one guy, and he just said, the mind is an excellent servant, but a taskmaster.
Mhm.
And what he was talking about is when you allow yourself to be governed by spirit. And I think, and I'm not trying to brag, I think that's actually what happened. I'm like,
Yeah.
God talked, the intellect was in that moment, the helmsman through some rough waters, and things are okay. So when I talk with you guys and in this realm, I'm trying to understand spirits better, not just by discerning from my heart, but to analytically understand it as well. And I see
Yep.
see that they're not polar opposites. It's not either or.
Right.
I think
Right.
they can
Yeah.
mix.
No, there's a middle ground. I mean, we're between heaven and earth for a reason, right? That's where the middle ground is, right? And I think the problem, Ron, that everyone's running into is they want to reveal the truth. They want the truth out. They want to know if aliens exist. They want to know what the government knows. They want to know who shot JFK.
Yeah.
None of this stuff is good for anybody, right? Because what difference is like they want to know who's in the Epstein list? I'm like, yeah, but you can't go after them legally, dumbass.
Well,
Why is this good? And you're going to catch a bunch of people that did nothing wrong, and you have no
Right.
way to tell who's who. None. And those people have money and control over things, and you're
bring it
gonna
into
piss
the
them off.
spiritual world.
Right, but see that's the problem. The spirit of revealing everything, of showing everything to everyone via truth.
Okay.
Well, truth is important, okay, but it's not the most important thing, right? It's one of three things, and so you can't just tell everybody the quote objective truth about everything because they can't handle it. And even if they could, you don't know what actions are correct, even if. Well, I said this earlier, Ron. You probably didn't hear it. Like, I was like, you guys on Twitter. I said you have to go look up the federal laws on age of consent, and then tell me how on Epstein Island they're going to convict anybody of anything, because they can't legally do anything.
No, I got it.
And that's another thing that I was thinking, Mark, Ron, just real quickly, the way that you described that that encounter that you had really sounded to me like it was probably also the gift of counsel, right? And in the Catholic tradition, we've got the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit that can allow us to. So you've got your virtues, right, and the things that you've been given and the things that you've been built up, where you're operating on a human power, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even things like faith, hope, and charity, they're given to you by God so that you can operate them as a human power. But sometimes God comes in and begins to operate on like a higher level than a human being is capable of. That you're participating in a higher way. And the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit are when you're participating in that higher way. And it seems like you were given the spirit of counsel to make a prudent split-second judgment in a difficult situation, and it was like the right one, and it led to a good outcome there. So,
yeah, it was a lifesaver. It really was. I thought my ship was sinking. I don't like demons. Like, I know the stuff, not because I want to. Like it's just because I had a question. Oh, okay. And we've talked about this before, and I think I'm at the point of letting it go in a good way because this kind of ties in. A while ago, had a dream, met a girl, may or may not have been she who might be called unspoken in the Protestant world next to Voldemort. but I had a friend, Neil Dedalis. I don't know if you know him. A good guy, Catholic fellow.
I've met him a couple times. Yeah,
he's an excellent fellow. And he said, just rest in the mystery. And as a priest, and I'm not nailing you, but I trust your opinion. Is that kosher? Like, dude, I ain't got it figured out no more.
Yeah, I mean, what else? So this was kind of what. So it depends on what we're talking about. Depends on who we're talking about. Rest in the mystery is not always going to be the right answer because sometimes you're obliged to make some sort of a decision, right?
Yeah.
Um, so we'll pretend that that's not the case right now. And I was just reading a book on modesty,
Mhm.
um, and there's let's say there's a certain becomingness to veiling things, and it doesn't mean that like the veil is never lifted,
Okay.
but you don't go in there rashly. Like you have to go in there with a certain level of reverence there. And if you
Mhm.
don't, then like maybe bad things will happen, and um
Right.
when we're approaching those sorts of things that ought to be approached with reverence, and we're like genuinely confused and we don't know how to behave, then resting in the mystery is a
Mhm.
really good idea, because you'll just allow
Okay.
a certain type of unveiling to happen at the appropriate time, and when you're ready for it, you know.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the
Okay.
opposite of, everything has to be revealed right now. Otherwise we're unjust. Mark would call that the age of gnosis. I think that's not a bad name for it at all. Where we're just knowledge, and everything you have to
Mhm.
know. And if you don't know, that is a crime against humanity. Um,
Yep.
so, especially knowing your situation and the questions that you're pondering, and some of your background, I think that's actually really good advice for what you're dealing with. And I
Okay,
don't
cool.
think you'd be using that
I,
to run
it
away.
actually feels pretty good. That's cool. Okay, I'm not looking for the answer I want. I just want a real answer, like feedback. I'm like, okay, cool. Um, with that being said, I will say she likes peace a lot.
We might
I
call
mean,
her the
there's
Queen of Peace. I don't know.
don't tell me that right now, Fada. I got. I mean,
One title will not overwhelm you.
well, all kidding aside, really, really, and then I'm looking at it this, and I'd rather be transformed and made different than know a name. I'm like, okay, fine. I don't know. I'd probably screw things up if I knew a name. I'd be honest. I I know who I am. The more I don't know, I think sometimes the better off. Like knowing Jesus, yeah. Oh, okay, it's you. Fine. Okay, let's roll. No more Buddha. Other things, eh, just be quiet. Oh, by the way, you'll like this, Mark. She told me to be. She did not tell me to be quiet, but when I'm quiet, that's when it's the best.
Because it's an
So,
interesting thing, and I preached about this once, and I made somebody cry, like nice, happy tears. We look
oh,
at,
okay.
let's
Yeah.
say, the doctrine of the ascension of Jesus into heaven, and we look at the
Mhm.
dogma of Mary's assumption into heaven. The doctrine of the ascension is very like out in the open, right? It's in Scripture, right? Jesus
Mhm.
makes
Right.
sure that the apostles are there, right? He makes
Right.
sure that the angels come and chew the guys out for just staring up at the sky. He makes sure it gets recorded in
Right.
Scripture, and like it's like okay, this is like a really explicit thing here. Whereas when we look at, the
Yeah.
assumption of Our Lady, it's like it's kind of shrouded in mystery. It's something that happens out of public view. Was it the case that Our Lady, fell into such a deep sleep that people thought she was dead? Did she actually die? We haven't settled these questions yet, but it's just as much a doctrine of a faith. And um, that's kind of the way it's supposed to be, that Our Lady certainly raises our Lord, and furnishes a body for him, furnishes a home for him, builds up his
Mhm.
body, and certainly doesn't get in the way of the building up of his specific uh, soul. Sorry, reading the comments over there.
Right.
But then she fades out into the background. It's not like she's no longer doing anything, and we get these little tantalizing hints all throughout scripture that, your own soul a sword shall pierce, right? To reveal the thoughts of many. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and then, that little glimpse that it wasn't just the apostles who were up in the upper room waiting for the Holy Spirit. The mother of Jesus was there as well. And she was there at the foot of the cross. So she just shows up at like the perfect times to put a little bit of influence in there, but she's mostly in the background. So the fact that you're coming here and telling me all these things, you're just catching little glimpses around the corner of your eye, and you're not, that indicates to me that things are going well.
Cool. I appreciate
I think
that.
I think of like the Fatima children who they had a vision of Our Lady, and like they can't really talk. Neither could Saint Bernadette when in Lourdes, when she had a vision of Our Lady. She was just kind of like didn't know what to do, and then Our Lady took out the rosary. Hey, do you remember the rosary your parents taught you how to? And she started praying the Hail Marys along, and that like kind of. So sometimes, not getting the full treatment right away is a good thing. So most of us are blessed
Yeah,
with
no, that's cool. I
gradual
get
revelations.
Well, I will say this. It came at the right time when I thought my ship was sinking. Like I was spiritually having encounters that were very negative. I mean, they were bad. And I thought, what was getting in my head, I'm like, God, am I unclean? Do I have a impure? Am I mixed? Is there another spirit in me? Like, what's going on here? And I kind of knew that. I'm like, nah, there ain't a word says, but it was getting in my head. And these attacks I couldn't shake them. And then had the dream with her. And sometimes they might try to sneak away. I can think about her gone. All right, don't know who she is, but everybody's at the party all the time. And I make light of it, and I don't even like doing that. It's like something. I think Martin Shaw, I do like him, and he talks about how when you see something in its natural beauty, just not glamorous beauty, just a natural beauty that is perfect. That's the kind of thing. Like there's no makeup, there's no veneer, there's no shine, there's no extra. It's like seeing deer out in the woods. You're like, okay, that's beautiful. Just kind of like that. Just okay. And it's so weird when I talk about her, he shows up. And I'm like, okay, what's going there? All right. Get out of this Catholic realm. All right. I've had enough of you both. Thank you so much.
Well, we haven't had enough of you, Ron.
Oh, dude. All right. We're gonna have a pint together. We're gonna common. I can't say that word, Mark. Common blah 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 explosive. It sounds like
explosive. Yes.
Yeah, it sounds like
just say the world is too big.
The world's big.
Right. The world is right. It almost makes me think of like intellectual or verbal diarrhea. It's like there's.
It is.
All right. Sorry. On that note, guys, peace.
Peace, Ron. Oh, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's always...
combinatorial explosion started its life in the traveling salesman problem, didn't it? I think that's where it started. It's like this idea that you wanted 50, you wanted to visit 50 cities in the United States, and calculating the shortest route between all of them is just
if you use regular mathematics, you can't do it. If you use the algorithm that mimics what ants do, they can do it quickly. So yeah, I mean, I've got this new thing. I haven't pulled this weapon out yet, but comp sci is greater than cog sci, and like I have the goods to prove it. Like cog sci is a waste of time. because all the things they're trying to do were already done by von Neumann and the guys who followed after him in comp sci, and that's gonna bite them. Like, and I didn't even see it. It's so funny. It was my buddy gave a talk here in Columbia, on swarm intelligence, and I was like, "What? This tickles my brain, right?" But I can't. I knew all those algorithms because I learned all that stuff. I was like, "Oh yeah, ants and bees." John Vervaeke will tell you like, "Oh, we don't know how ants and bees work," and it's like, no, actually, the computer science guys do know how ants and bees work. We actually have it in an algorithm. The cog sci guys don't know how ants and bees work because they don't even have a definition of intelligence. But actually, the comp sci guys have definitions of intelligence. They may suck, but at least they have them. The cog sci guys have nothing. Hey, Bruce.
You gonna go beat that punching bag up?
I did earlier. It works
It
out
is
pretty
right
well.
and just. It is
He's
right
a
and
beast.
just.
Yep, absolutely. So, sorry,
We
I
don't
popped
call
in.
him
I
Bruce the
missed-
Beast for nothing.
Yeah, sorry, I missed the other part there. I heard you talking about computer scientists, and I was like, oh, my favorite people.
He said knowingly. Yeah. No, it just Ron brought up combinatorial explosion. And I was like, yeah, that's the thing that should tell these idiots they're wrong and that their system has limits that it can't get past. But they don't get the message. They want to label it and solve it.
Sure. Yeah, makes sense.
I mean, canon law definitely knows it has limits. Like
Well,
if you're in
yeah.
canon law and you think this is the be all end all, you're just dumb because this ain't
Again,
how.
as
That's
far
not how it
as far
works.
as the church is concerned,
Yeah, it's a useful tool for governance and organizing things and resolving disputes. And if we use it for that, it's fine. But like the real stuff, the real stuff happens elsewhere.
What you can't adjudicate liturgy with it?
You could adjudicate certain things in liturgy, like whether or not they follow the law. But that's not the most interesting thing that happens in a liturgy is following the law. There's actually
Exactly.
much more interesting things that happen
was
in a
my point.
liturgy.
That was my point. You can't just apply law to everything, huh? Weird.
Yeah,
Well-
you need to have multiple tools.
yeah, you can't get around the issue of interpretation. I mean, that's kind of what's going on with it, with the law as such. So you have a magistrate to interpret that for you.
Yeah, but you have things outside that make the law even viable.
Absolutely.
In the same way, this is Peterson's point about science. You have things outside of science that came first, which is just everything, by
Yeah.
the way, right? That set boundaries that
Mhm.
allow science to exist. And
That's
when
right.
you try to apply science outside of those boundaries, you run into combinatorial explosion.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
it.
I
It's
mean,
that easy.
right. Yeah, they have to presuppose so many things. And that's fine. It's just whether or not they admit their presupposition.
No, they don't. Right.
And can they
that's where it all
justify
breaks
their-
down.
Yeah, can they justify them? Right.
They,
Which they
they
can't.
try to self-justify. Emergence is good. Individualism, objectivism. That's all it is.
Mhm.
I mean, that was
Yeah, we
one of
had
my
that.
very,
Yeah.
very
I'm sorry,
early insights in my study of philosophy was that a lot of people had taken the method of science, which is, the materialism. You just assume materialism, right? Because that's all you could study, and then had like extrapolated that into a worldview, which was never supposed to happen. And that was
Right.
actually very early on, like 19, 20 years old. That was pretty helpful for me. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
science isn't supposed to answer all these questions.
Right.
Right.
Your worldview informs the way you do science, not the other way around. But whether or not someone can justify their worldview is usually the question I have with someone like that. But it's hard when you speak to someone that presupposes these things, right? That they know in their heart and they've been suppressing the truth and unrighteousness for so long. It's a miracle when they break out of that. So, it's difficult to address them when they don't really have like lens on to see the worldview that they just take for granted. But one of the best questions I usually ask is like, what accounts for unity among diversity? Like they have to presuppose that when they do science.
Right. Right. Or not. I mean, I don't like the word unity anymore. I mean, unity's fine, but wholeness is what they can't account for.
Yeah,
And
or
that's
what accounts for the one and the many? There are many things. There's one thing. If there are one thing, there are many things. How do you account
right.
for
And
that in
and
science?
the one and the many don't account for wholeness. And because they can't account for wholeness, so they've brought it down to one and many instead of bringing it down to wholeness, which is
When you hear DC Schindler talk, just know that Thomas Aquinas uses oneness in a way that scientists don't. So he uses it as a transcendental property of being. So if you're going to think about something, you can only think about it on the basis that it's one. And
right.
so everything has a certain unity to it, a certain oneness to it. So just,
Right, but when materialists use the term unity, they're talking about assembling something from parts.
yeah.
That's the
Right.
difference. And
Right.
I
So
know that,
wholeness
which
will
is
get you
why
around
I
that,
like
yeah.
wholeness, because
Yeah.
wholeness emanates from above, and there's no way around that. And that's like I said to Ron, like that is the difference. Combinatorial explosion comes from the confusion that the whole can be just the sum of the parts, whereas the whole cannot be the sum of the parts. Right? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. The unity is not the way the science idiots use it. And that's
Yeah.
why I make the distinction, because they can't get around that, because the statement the whole is greater than the sum of the parts pre-existed their lunacy. And so they have no defense, basically. They have no
And
defense against that.
that insight healed me when I finally understood that the whole was, I was like 22 years old, 21, 22 years old, that finally clicked, and I was happy from that point. Happier.
Sure.
Yeah. But speaking of things that'll make me happier, it's dark outside, and rational creatures would go to bed under such circumstances. So I think we're going to be calling it a night. Bruce, good to see you, even if ever so briefly. Glad to have Ron on. Mark and I had a pretty good discussion. For any of you who didn't catch all of that, on authority and leadership and hierarchy in the first hour. So maybe some of you might enjoy catching up on that. Otherwise, good night and God bless you all.
Good night. God bless.